Today I'm going to share with you a really easy tutorial to make one of my favorite napkins to set my table with every week. Now, this uses sort of a shibori technique, and I did use a kit that I got on clearance at Target, but you can definitely pull out your own materials. You do need navy blue tie-dye. If you want to do it properly, you're going to use indigo dye, but it does not have to be actual indigo dye. The quality of dye does matter, so definitely use real indigo if you want a much deeper, nicer color. And you can use rubber bands or cord for this. Rubber bands will definitely get you a much better resist. So protect your surface with a plastic sheet and some paper towels to absorb the excess water. And then mix up your dye. Again, a stronger consistency with less water will get you deeper colors. More water will help it spread further, but might get you a bit of a more diluted dye. Mix that up in a squeeze bottle. Mini condiment bottles are perfect. You can actually get these at the dollar store or quite cheap on Amazon. I will link all supplies in the description as well as a full tutorial. Now, the towel that I used is a cheap gauzy tea towel. I do recommend that you use something thicker like a nice cotton napkin, but this is what came with my kit, and it's not expensive to get a better napkin. So we're cording and folding these, and we're going to do a Kanoko tied method. Now, again, there's so many different ways that you could do even this one method. A lot of them I just pinched up from the center and gathered the fabric. This one I accordion folded and then folded into thirds, and then I tied it off. Tie off your strings tightly, even though the dye sometimes does penetrate right underneath the top surface of the rubber band. If you tie it off tightly, then underneath you're going to get much more lines, much better lines. So we are using rubber bands, and we're going to add the rubber bands at increments. Again, the more rubber bands you add, the more white space you are going to have. So bind that nice and tight. And you might want to take off your gloves at this point if you put them on. I put them on for mixing the dye, and I did take them off at some point because they could catch on your gloves. But generally speaking, when handling dye, you do want to wear gloves. But at this point, if it's annoying you, just take them off. Now, the cool thing about Shibori is that it basically takes tie dye, which is super fun, and makes it really elegant. So you can use it for something like dinner napkins. But it still keeps them fun and gives them sort of like a more casual picnic vibe without being totally summer camp. And you can definitely use this for winter or holidays too. I think they're gorgeous colors for Hanukkah, but you can also use it for Christmas. They're kind of the color of snowflake, and you don't have to go with the traditional red and green for this. So once you've tied it all up, go ahead and put your gloves back on and give your tie dye one last shake. And now you're going to add your dye mixture to your napkin. Now, if you've wet your napkin before, you can wet your napkin. You don't have to. You might get a slightly more diluted color, but it will spread more easily. If you didn't, you might want to use your gloved hand to sort of help smush the color into the napkin. I find that really helps me. And in general, I'm a tactile person, so I do like to use my hands to make things. And so doing it this way really helped me get the color where I wanted to. Try to get the color in all the folds. I know it's going to look like you got dye in too many places, but it will really help that you don't have too much white space, and you're still going to have that white space if you tied it nice and tight. So go ahead, thoroughly soak your napkin in the dye, mix it more as needed. I do recommend purchasing as much dye as you might need, save the extra for another project, and you can mix it more as needed, and it'll last for a while if it's not mixed up yet. So that way you're not actually wasting your material. So once you've fully soaked your napkin with the dye, you're going to take a Ziploc bag. Now, as far as letting it sit, you kind of want to let it sit for at least 24 hours. More time will let the color absorb for longer. But I think I left mine for about 48 hours. So go ahead, add that to a Ziploc bag and let it soak, and you can go ahead and clean your surface so you don't get dye everywhere. When you're ready, put on a fresh pair of gloves and take it out. Wash off the dye until the water runs clear. And this is the funnest part of any tie-dye project. That is removing the rubber bands. So go ahead and remove those rubber bands. And at first I was kind of nervous. Oh my God, I do not have any white space. But don't worry, you're going to have that white space underneath, as I soon learned. And this one, it came out gorgeous. This is my favorite one. I don't know why I didn't do all the napkins with this method. The other ones I did do the pull up from the center that gets you a bit more of a spiral. But just wait for it. You're going to love this reveal. Now, if you pull off the rubber bands like I did, you will be able to reuse them. Again, only for something of the same color because it will stain things. But you can also simply snip them off. Just be super careful not to accidentally snip your napkin. Use a small, thread scissors rather than a full-size scissor. And we are ready for the reveal. You see that white is starting to show, and look how gorgeous that pattern is. You can see how it's variated. It's not too white. There are areas that are more, and it looks so organic and beautiful. Now, the next step is going to be to wash this with hot water. You do want to use heat because you do want your colors to set. Think about how stains set if you use hot water. So the same applies to dye. So we washed it with hot, we dried it with hot, and we're going to wash it in a separate load for at least the first few washes. But our Shibori napkins are now ready to use. Now, there are many different ways that you can fold a napkin, of course. That is a subject for another time, but just to use this one now, we're folding it in half. And then we are once again going to accordion fold this thing. I did fold it again in half the other way because, again, it is a thin, gauzy towel, not a real napkin. But then we just bunch it up. It doesn't have to be a neat accordion fold to get that kind of like bow look. And we're going to place it in a napkin ring. Napkin rings are my favorite. I have loads of tutorials on my channel, so definitely check those out. That includes a tutorial for how to make this wooden one, which, by the way, barely fits this napkin, but you can once again control the thickness of the hole for that. So I hope you enjoyed learning how to make Shibori napkins. Make sure to follow, subscribe for more fun and doable crafts like this on a beginner level, not one that presumes that you are already an expert. And like this video, and of course comment if you have any questions.